How a college dropout built a $100 billion company, the Facebook story. In February 2004, a 19-year-old kid sat in his dorm room at Harvard and wrote a few lines of code that would eventually connect 3 billion human beings. He didn't have a business plan. He didn't have investors. He didn't even have a clean pair of socks. His name was Mark Zuckerberg, and this is the story of how a socially awkward computer nerd built one of the most powerful companies the world has ever seen. But let's rewind, because this story doesn't start with billions. It starts with a breakup. It was October 2003. Mark had just gotten dumped, and like any rational person dealing with heartbreak, he decided to hack into Harvard's student database. He pulled photos of students, put them side by side on a website, and let people vote on who was more attractive. He called it Face Mash. It blew up overnight. In just 4 hours, the site got 450 visitors and 22,000 photo views. Harvard's servers crashed. The administration was furious. Mark got called in front of the disciplinary board and nearly got expelled. Most people would have stopped right there. But Mark wasn't most people. He saw something in those numbers. He realized that people were desperate to look at other people online. They wanted to connect. They wanted to compare. They wanted to know what everyone else was doing. That was the spark. A few months later, in January 2004, Mark started building something new, something bigger. He registered the domain thefacebook.com on January 11th. And on February 4th, 2004, he launched it from his dorm room in Kirkland House. The original idea was simple. It was a directory, a digital yearbook for Harvard students. You made a profile, uploaded a photo, and listed your interests. That's it, nothing fancy. But here's the thing. Within 24 hours, between 1,200 and 1,500 Harvard students had signed up. Within a month, more than half the undergraduate student body was on it. Mark didn't do this alone, by the way. His roommates, Eduardo Savarine, Andrew McCollum, Dustin Moskovitz, and Chris Hughes all helped get it off the ground. Eduardo put up $15,000 of his own money to cover the server costs. That investment would later become one of the most famous and most painful bubble deals in tech history. The site spread to Columbia, Stanford, and Yale within weeks, then to all Ivy League schools, then to most universities across the country. Every campus that got access went crazy for it. It was like wildfire, but faster. By June 2004, Mark made a decision that shocked everyone around him. He dropped out of Harvard. He packed his bags and moved to Palo Alto, California. He was 20 years old, he had no degree, and he was betting everything on this little website. People thought he was insane. His parents weren't thrilled, but Mark had seen the growth numbers. He knew he was sitting on something massive. That summer, something critical happened. A man named Sean Parker showed up. You might know him as the guy who co-founded Napster, the music sharing service that terrified the entire music industry. Sean was charismatic, well-connected, and fearless. He saw what Facebook could become before almost anyone else did. Sean introduced Mark to Peter Thiel, the PayPal co-founder and legendary investor. In the summer of 2004, Thiel wrote a check for $500,000 in exchange for a 10.2% stake in the company. That $500,000 would eventually be worth over $1 billion. Not a bad return, but it wasn't all smooth sailing. There was a massive problem brewing. 3 Harvard seniors, Cameron Winklevoss, Tyler Winklevoss, and Divya Narendra, claimed that Mark had stolen their idea. They said they'd hired him to build a social network called Harvard Connection, and that he'd taken their concept and run with it. This fight went on for years. It got ugly, it got personal. It eventually landed in court, and in 2008, the Winklevoss twins settled for $65 million. They weren't happy about it. They appealed. They lost. The whole saga later became the backbone of the movie The Social Network, directed by David Fincher. And then there was Eduardo, Mark's first investor, his co-founder, his friend. As the company grew, Eduardo's stake got diluted from around 30% down to less than 10%. Eduardo was devastated. He sued Mark in 2005. They settled out of court and Eduardo's name was added back as a co-founder. But the friendship, that was gone. Building Facebook wasn't just about code, it was about sacrifice. And sometimes the people who start the journey with you don't finish it. Now, let's talk about growth, because the numbers are absolutely staggering. Facebook hit 1 million users by the end of 2004. By 2006, it opened to the general public. Anyone over 13 with an email address could join. That was a controversial move. A lot of college users were angry. They didn't want their parents on Facebook. But Mark didn't care. He was playing a bigger game. By 2008, Facebook had 100 million users. By 2010, 500 million. By 2012, the company went public with an IPO that valued it at $104 billion. It was the largest technology IPO in history at that point. Mark was 28 years old and worth roughly $19 billion. But here's what's wild. The IPO was actually kind of a disaster at first. The stock opened at $38 and quickly dropped. Within months it fell to around $18. People said Facebook was overhyped, that it couldn't make money on mobile, that it was the next MySpace. They were wrong. Mark did something that very few CEOs have the courage to do. He pivoted the entire company to mobile. In 2012, almost none of Facebook's revenue came from mobile ads. By 2014, more than half of it did. He saw where the world was going and he dragged his company there, kicking and screaming if necessary. And then came the acquisitions. In 2012, Facebook bought Instagram for $1 billion. People laughed. $1 billion for a photo app with 13 employees? Today, Instagram is estimated to be worth over $100 billion. In 2014, Facebook bought WhatsApp for $19 billion. Again, people said he was crazy. WhatsApp now has over 2 billion users worldwide. Mark didn't just build a social network, he built an empire. By 2021, Facebook hit a market cap of over $1 trillion. The kid from White Plains, New York, the one who got in trouble for rating people's faces in his dorm room, was now running one of the 5 most valuable companies on the planet. Of course, it hasn't all been triumph. Facebook has faced massive controversies. The Cambridge Analytica scandal in 2018 revealed that data from 87 million users had been harvested without consent. Congressional hearings followed. Public trust took a hit. Calls for regulation grew louder. In October 2021, Mark rebranded the parent company to Meta, betting the future on virtual reality and the metaverse. It was a risky move. The metaverse division lost over $13 billion in a single year. Critics piled on. But if there's one thing Mark Zuckerberg has proven over and over again, it's this: don't bet against him. So here's the question worth sitting with. Mark Zuckerberg didn't have a business degree. He didn't have a 10-year plan. He didn't follow a formula. He had an obsession, a dorm room, and the nerve to drop everything and chase it. What's the thing you've been too afraid to chase? And what would happen if you actually did?